The booth cancellation was dated 3 weeks before the conference. The deposit receipt showed payment cleared 4 weeks before that. Non-refundable. Pre-approved. Confirmed in writing. My name is Natalie, and I'd managed product marketing for the startup for 2 years. Trade shows were my responsibility. This one was the biggest in the Asia-Pacific region. 6 months of planning. Client meetings already scheduled. Demo units shipped. The cancellation email arrived on a Monday morning. Budget reallocation, it said. Strategic priorities had shifted. I checked the expense tracking system. The booth fee was still listed as approved. Status, active. I called the event organizer. They confirmed. Booth 47B, still registered under our company name. Payment received. No cancellation request on file. I forwarded their confirmation to my boss. He replied in 4 minutes. The booth had been reassigned internally. Marketing would still have a presence, just under different leadership. I asked who. He said the VP of Sales would be managing the booth this year. I asked when that decision was made. He said 2 weeks ago. I pulled the project timeline. Every milestone I'd hit, every vendor contract I'd negotiated, every client invitation I'd sent, all documented, all approved, all under my name. I saved everything to a separate drive that night. Every email, every approval, every contract. The next morning I arrived at the office early. The VP of Sales was already in the conference room. He was on a call. I could see him through the glass walls gesturing at a laptop screen. I made coffee, checked my calendar. The handover meeting was scheduled for Thursday, 2 days away. I opened my project folder, started organizing files by category. Vendor contracts in one folder, client communications in another, budget approvals in a third. I didn't rush. Wednesday morning, I received the updated conference agenda. My name had been removed from all sessions. The VP's name appeared instead. But the client meeting requests were still in my inbox. 6 confirmed appointments, all scheduled weeks ago, all expecting me. I forwarded the agenda to my personal email. Then I checked the event organizer's system. My login still worked. The booth registration showed my name as primary contact. Payment confirmation listed my email. I took screenshots, saved them with timestamps. The handover meeting started exactly at 3 p.m. Thursday. My boss joined remotely. The VP had printed notes. He asked about booth logistics, display arrangements, demo schedules. I walked him through everything. The equipment deliveries, the setup timeline, the vendor coordination. He took detailed notes. My boss asked if there were any outstanding issues. I said everything was confirmed, all payments processed, all vendors notified. He thanked me for the thorough preparation. The meeting lasted 19 minutes. I went back to my desk, opened a new document, started listing every vendor relationship tied to the conference. Booth designer, demo supplier, promotional materials vendor, audio-visual contractor, catering service. 15 vendors total. Every contract had my signature, my phone number, my email as primary contact. I saved the list, encrypted the file. Friday afternoon, the VP sent a request. He needed access to all vendor contracts, login credentials for the event portal, contact lists for the clients. I provided everything. He didn't acknowledge receipt. The following Monday, I noticed my access to the conference planning channel had changed. I could view messages but couldn't post. No announcement, no explanation. I exported the entire message history. 6 months of coordination. Saved it locally. Tuesday, the first client email arrived. They wanted to confirm our meeting time at the booth. They'd received a calendar update showing the VP as the new contact. They seemed confused. I forwarded the email to the VP, copied my boss. I asked how he wanted me to respond. My boss replied within 10 minutes. All client communication should go through the VP now. I should redirect any inquiries. I acknowledged. The client sent another message an hour later, direct to me. They asked if I was no longer with the company. I didn't respond. I saved the email thread. Wednesday, a second client reached out, then a third. Both asking similar questions, both expressing confusion about the contact change. I forwarded each one to the VP. He handled the responses. I wasn't copied. By Thursday, 4 of the 6 clients had contacted me directly. One asked if they could still meet with me instead. Another requested a call to understand the change. The VP was managing all replies now. I checked my sent folder. Every client relationship I'd built over 8 months, every product discussion, every proposal I'd sent. All documented, all time-stamped, all from my email address. Friday, I reviewed my employment contract, the full document, 23 pages. Section 7 covered intellectual property. Work product created during employment belonged to the company, but Section 9 defined my role. Marketing manager, event coordination, client relationship development. Section 12 outlined termination procedures, 4 weeks' notice required from either party, severance based on tenure. I read the non-compete clause carefully. It restricted working for direct competitors. It didn't restrict client relationships or vendor partnerships. I made notes in a separate document. Then I opened the vendor contracts again. The booth designer's agreement listed me as client representative. Payment came from my corporate card, but the contract showed my name, not the company's. The demo supplier's terms named me as primary contact. Change of contact required written notification with 14 days' notice. The promotional vendor's contract had similar language, 10 days' notice for contact changes. I created a spreadsheet, listed every vendor, contract terms, notice periods, my role in each agreement. 17 entries total. I saved it to an encrypted drive. The weekend passed quietly. Monday morning, the VP requested login credentials for the event organizer's vendor portal. I provided them. 2 hours later, I received an automated notification. My portal access had been used from a different IP address. I checked the activity log. The VP had downloaded vendor contact lists, payment schedules, booth specifications. I changed my password immediately. The system logged him out. Tuesday morning, he sent another message. The portal credentials weren't working. I said I'd check with IT. I didn't. Wednesday, he escalated to the IT department. They reset the portal access, sent new credentials to both of us. I logged in first, downloaded every file before he could access the system. Then I logged out. Thursday, my calendar showed a cancellation. The post-conference debrief meeting. I'd been scheduled to present results and client feedback. My name was removed from the attendee list. No explanation provided. I saved the original invitation, saved the cancellation notice. That afternoon, I checked the shared drive. My edit permissions for the conference folder had been revoked. I could view files, couldn't modify them. I started downloading everything: presentations, briefing documents, budget spreadsheets, vendor quotes. The download took 38 minutes. I saved all files to an external drive, made a backup copy. Friday was quiet. No meetings. No messages about the conference. I worked on other projects, kept my routine normal, but I was documenting everything. The following Monday, I contacted the booth designer, asked if she needed anything before the conference. She said she was waiting for final payment. Her invoice had been submitted 3 weeks ago. I asked if she'd followed up. She said yes, twice. No response. I checked the expense system. Her invoice showed as pending, no approval, no payment date. The approving manager field had changed. It now showed the VP's name. I took a screenshot. Then I called the demo supplier, confirmed delivery arrangements. They said they'd been trying to reach someone about logistics. Their contact in the system had changed. They weren't sure who to coordinate with. I said someone would follow up. They mentioned they preferred working with me. The planning had been smooth. They didn't want complications with a new contact. I thanked them, made no commitments. Tuesday, I messaged accounts payable, asked about the designer's invoice status. They replied quickly. The invoice was flagged for review, waiting for approval from the new manager. I asked who that was. They confirmed it was the VP of sales. I asked about the typical approval timeline. They said normally 48 hours. This one had been pending 11 days. I thanked them, didn't follow up further. Wednesday, the demo supplier sent an email. They needed confirmation on delivery logistics. The message was addressed to me. I forwarded it to the VP without comment. He replied directly to the supplier, copied me, said he'd handle all delivery coordination. The supplier responded to both of us. Their records showed me as primary contact. They needed written confirmation of any contact changes. I didn't respond. The VP sent a new email, just to the supplier. He attached a company authorization letter with my boss's signature. The supplier acknowledged receipt, but they added a note. Any changes to delivery terms would require contract renegotiation. I saved the entire email thread. Thursday, I reviewed the main conference contract, the agreement between our company and the event organizer, signed 9 months ago. Registration fee, $12,000. Booth rental, $4,200. Equipment, $1,800. Total investment, $16,200. The contract listed 2 key roles: billing contact, primary representative. Both showed my name. Payment came from the company account, but registration confirmation went to my email. Booth assignment letter had my name and title. I read the change of participants section. Section 4.3, changes to registered representatives required written request, minimum 14 days before the event. Approval needed from the original registrant. The original registrant? That was me. I downloaded the complete terms of service, read section 6.2 about liability and representation. The primary registrant maintained responsibility for all booth activities unless formally transferred through approved channels. I highlighted the relevant sections, printed them, filed in a locked drawer. Friday afternoon, I drafted an email to the event organizer. Subject: Participant Change Inquiry, Booth 47B. I explained that I'd been informed of a representative change for our booth. I wanted to ensure we followed proper procedures per Section 4.3. I asked what documentation they required. I didn't copy my boss or the VP. I sent it from my work email at 4:52 p.m. The response arrived Monday morning. They thanked me for reaching out, confirmed that representative changes required written authorization from the original contact. They also needed confirmation that all associated vendor contracts had been updated. They attached a change request form. The form had 4 required sections: original registrant signature, new representative information, company authorization, vendor acknowledgement list. I saved the email and attachment. I didn't fill out the form. I didn't forward it to anyone. Tuesday, the VP messaged me. The event organizer had contacted him about a change request form. Did I know anything about it? I said I'd inquired about their procedures, making sure we followed protocol. He asked if I'd submitted any forms. I said no. He said he'd handle it going forward. I acknowledged. Wednesday, the event organiser sent another message. They needed my signature on the change form. The VP had submitted it, but it couldn't process without my authorisation. I replied that I'd review it and respond. I didn't open the attachment. Thursday, the VP asked if I'd signed the form. I said I was reviewing it. He said the conference was 13 days away. This needed to be finalised. I said I understood. Friday, I opened the form. The new representative line showed the VP's name. Company authorisation had my boss's digital signature. The vendor acknowledgement section was blank. I drafted a response to the event organiser. I'd reviewed the form, however I had concerns about the vendor section. Multiple contracts remained in my name: the designer, the supplier, the promotional vendor. I asked if the form could proceed without vendor confirmations. They replied in 90 minutes. No, their policy required all contracted vendors to acknowledge contact changes. This prevented service disruptions and coordination issues. I thanked them for the clarification. I forwarded their response to the VP, copied my boss. I explained we'd need to update vendor contracts before the change could process. My boss replied first. Asked how long that would take. I said it depended on each vendor's contract terms. The designer required 14 days' notice for contact changes. The supplier required 10 days. He asked if there was a faster option. I said not without renegotiating contracts. That might involve additional fees. The VP sent a separate message, just to me. Asked if I could contact vendors directly, get their acknowledgement quickly. I said I could try, but the contracts had specific notification requirements. He asked me to make the attempt. I said I would. I didn't contact any vendors. Monday morning, 11 days before the conference, I received a meeting invitation. Attendees: me, my boss, the VP, HR. Scheduled for Tuesday, 10 a.m. I accepted without comment. Tuesday arrived. Same small conference room, same setup. HR attended in person. My boss joined remotely again. The VP sat across the table. HR opened the discussion. They wanted to find a resolution that worked for everyone. My boss said the representative change needed to happen. Business decision. I said I understood. The VP said vendor coordination was creating problems. Time was running short. I said the contracts had specific terms we needed to follow. HR asked if I could request expedited vendor approvals. I said I could ask, but I couldn't guarantee they'd agree to waive their notice periods. My boss asked what would happen if the change wasn't processed in time. I said the event organiser wouldn't permit it. Their policy was clear. The VP asked what that meant for our booth presence. I said the registration would remain under my name as primary representative. HR asked if I planned to attend the conference. I said I hadn't received any confirmation about my attendance. My boss said this situation had become complicated. He asked if there was a simpler solution. I paused before responding. Then I said there might be one option. HR asked what I was thinking. I said the contracts and relationships could potentially transfer if the company acquired them from me. The room went silent for several seconds. The VP asked me to clarify what I meant. I explained that the vendor relationships were tied to me individually. The contracts listed me as the client contact. If the company wanted to assume those relationships, they could purchase the rights. My boss asked if I was serious about this. I said yes. HR asked what kind of arrangement I was proposing. I said I'd need to consult with legal counsel before discussing specifics. The meeting ended 3 minutes later. I returned to my desk. I'd already contacted a lawyer the previous week. Wednesday morning, my attorney sent a formal letter to the company. The letter outlined the situation: vendor contracts in my name, intellectual property I'd developed for the conference, client relationships I'd established. It proposed a settlement structure. The company could acquire all conference-related assets through a one-time payment. The proposed amount? $48,000. The calculation was itemised: $16,000 for booth registration rights under my name, $12,000 for vendor contract transfers and relationship goodwill, $20,000 for intellectual property and client relationship value. The letter gave them 72 hours to respond. Their response came in 51 hours. Their corporate counsel sent a counter letter. They argued all work was performed as an employee, therefore it constituted company property. No separate ownership existed. My attorney responded the next day. She cited specific vendor contracts. Each listed me personally, not the company entity. The event registration named me as primary contact. The designer's work for hire agreement named me as the contracting party, despite payment from my corporate card. She attached documentation for every claim. She avowed that without my cooperation, the conference booth couldn't proceed. The attorney organiser had confirmed this requirement in writing. The contracting was now 8 days away. Friday afternoon, their counsel requested a settlement meeting. Monday morning, both attorneys met without me present. The session lasted 100 minutes. My attorney called afterward. They'd made a counter-offer: $35,000. Full mutual release of claims, non-disparagement agreement from both parties. I asked if this affected my employment. She said yes. The settlement included employment termination with severance, an additional 12 weeks of salary. I asked her professional assessment. She said the legal position was strong, but litigation could extend for months. This represented a clean resolution. I requested an hour to consider, then I called her back. I accepted the offer. Settlement documentation was finalised Wednesday, 6 days before the conference. I signed all agreements. They transferred funds to my account. I provided complete vendor contact information, signed all necessary change authorisation forms. My employment ended that afternoon. Thursday morning, I packed my desk, 2 boxes of personal items. The office was quiet. The VP walked past my cubicle once, didn't stop or speak. My boss sent a brief message, thanked me for handling things professionally. I didn't reply. I left my access badge on the desk, walked out at 10:47 a.m. The conference proceeded without me. I saw promotional photos posted online afterward. The booth layout looked different from my original design. The clients I'd invited didn't attend. 3 contacted me in the following weeks. They said they'd attempted to reschedule meetings but received no response from the new contact. One asked if I was still working in marketing. I said I was considering my options. 5 months later, I launched a consulting practice: event planning, vendor management, client development. My first client was the booth designer. She'd also left the startup. Her invoice had never been paid. She wanted to partner on future projects. My second client came from the conference. They'd noticed my previous work. They needed help planning their annual trade show. I didn't mention my former employer, didn't discuss the settlement, didn't explain what had happened. I simply built new relationships. 14 months later, I encountered the VP at a different industry conference. Different city, different event. He was managing a booth, looked stressed and overwhelmed. He saw me across the exhibition floor, looked away quickly. I kept walking. 2 years after the settlement, my consulting business was profitable. 15 regular clients, 3 part-time employees, a small office space in Brisbane's business district. The startup still existed. Different executive team. They'd stopped participating in major conferences. I kept the settlement agreement filed at home, next to the vendor contracts, next to the event organizers' correspondence. I never needed them again, but I kept them anyway.